Hello, hello, what is going on? Happy Sunday, everyone. It is November 22nd. Just checking in, hanging out, having a good old Sunday fun day. And with me is the one and only Kelly Cash. What's going on, Kelly?
Hi, y'all. Just celebrating that the Cowboys win. I got my Cowboys jersey on.
Get out of here.
I gotta celebrate them when I can this year because it's just not coming around that often for us.
You know, when I saw you had the jersey on, I was first going to be like, we got technical problems. I don't think we can make this work, Kelly. I don't know.
Well, I'm just glad that it also delivered victory to me in our fantasy football game.
Which is another, you should rub it in now. I'm surprised you didn't rub it in a little bit more before. There was just a glimmer of hope. Just a glimmer of hope. And then it's like Thielen touchdown. And Ezekiel apparently, couldn't find the end zone. It's just
other than throwing for 2 points, which I felt like should have been worth something for you, but
I know. I mean, it's funny. I'm all about football, love football, have no clue how fantasy football works.
Yeah, that's become clear.
Yes, my wife, who is in our league, has not opened up the app in like 3 or 4 weeks, and she is like third, and I am the last. With I don't know, what am I, like 3-8 now, or 3-7 now, or something?
It's pretty bad. I mean, it's Atlanta Falcons bad.
Yes, which again, throwing that, you're just salt on the wound, Kelly. Salt on the wound. What's you drinking, man?
I got a Guinness tonight.
Ooh, Guinness, right on. I got some Shiner Cheer.
Oh, Shiner Cheer.
Yeah, if the Falcons lose any more games, I'm going to have to switch something a little stronger. Right on. All right, let's get after it, man. So, if, I got a little question for you. Have you ever stretched your truth? For example, when I was a kid, I got sent to the principal's office a lot. Like a lot. What can I say? They just didn't think I was as funny as I thought I was. And they'd always ask, do you know what you did? And I always say, nothing. When really, I knew I did something. A little stretch of the truth. Well, Trump's lawyers are finding that doesn't work so good in a court of law.
I want to go back to what I asked you before. Your solicitation of witnesses yielded some affidavits from people, sworn affidavits, that you yourself determined are clearly false and spam, as you phrased it, correct? That's correct. If your process for gathering declarations has yielded sworn statements under oath that your investigation has determined to be false, that doesn't give me any reason to believe that your process is one that generates trustworthy affidavits. It simply generated affidavits that you can't prove are not true. That's not the same as being trustworthy. And anything else you'd like to say?
No, Your Honor. So, if you're keeping score at home, that is 1 win for Trump and 31 losses in court. That 1 win was allowing poll watchers to move from, hold on for it, wait for it, 20 feet away to 6 feet away. So now they're social distancing. Very safe with them. In Pennsylvania, a judge dropped the hammer on Trump by writing in his opinion that if they, quote, wanted to disenfranchise 7 million voters, that they would, one might expect that when seeking a startling outcome, a plaintiff would come formidably armed with compelling legal arguments and factual proof of rampant corruption. That has not happened. So, Kelly, at what point does all this song and dance by Trump start to actually do some real harm to our democracy?
Well, we talked about where there's smoke, there's fire, but not always. Sometimes you see a lot of smoke, you go, okay, well, there's, got to be something to that. I think they're simply just trying to create a lot of smoke around the process. These allegations are ridiculous. The lawsuits are ridiculous. They're being tossed like crazy. I mean, it's hard to keep up with the number of lawsuit losses each day. It's just, playing to the base.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's what it seemed like this whole time, is it's just they're either trying to play to the base, keep Trump happy, so he'll, go, show up in Georgia, which he's been tweeting nonstop and barely even mentions the race down there. So if you're a Republican, does he really care about the party, or is he only caring about himself? You got to kind of wonder. And it's also seems like he's just trying to screw it to the Democrats and try to drag this thing out as long as he can, and without any care about what it's doing to the legitimacy of our democracy.
I mean, I think that's something you can always count on, that he doesn't care about what it does to the legitimacy of democracy. I don't think that's in the current Republican playbook.
Nope, they seem way more interested in doing whatever it takes to hold power. And, not even caring about, it's not about the country anymore, it's about the party. And that's just kind of a sad place to be in, for sure. Because the thing that I think that people kind of don't get about this is that, we're trying to fight a pandemic right now, and there's big problems that we have for the future as Americans. I mean, the pandemic's causing some huge problems with our economy. There's automation on the horizon. There's there's a lot of big problems that Americans are facing, and we can't kind of turn the page until all this gets wrapped up.
Yeah, I think dragging this out doesn't do any real good for anyone. I think it's just a lot of political posturing and creating smoke where there isn't a fire. It's much ado about nothing. I think it's really what we're seeing here.
Much ado about nothing. Yes, a book I've never read, or a movie I've never seen, but hey, I'm sure that was way more entertaining than this. Well, on to our next story. And speaking of power and the future administration, there's a word that people use a lot nowadays, and that is the word unprecedented, especially with things happen to do with Trump, right? He'll eventually be removed from office voluntarily or kicking and screaming, but he's not exactly the first president to leave with some legal troubles. As you are sure, President Nixon resigned rather than facing his impending impeachment over the Watergate scandal, being famously told by Republican counterparts in the Senate, "Mr. President, you don't have the votes." But less attention is paid to what happened after Nixon left the White House.
Finally, I feel that Richard Nixon and his loved ones have suffered enough and will continue to suffer no matter what I do. Now, therefore, I, Gerald R. Ford, President of the United States, pursuant to the pardon power conferred upon me by Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, have granted, and by these presents do grant, a full, free, and absolute pardon unto Richard Nixon.
President Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon so the country could move on. Now, many historians point to Watergate and Nixon's pardon as the moment the presidency and really government lost credibility with a majority of the American people. Saturday Night Live then had the audacity to do this.
Hello. Hello. Hello, Nesson. Hank, can you talk to Sadat for a minute? Thank you. Now, as we can see, the Ford popularity is certainly on a sharp rise here. Whereas the...
Chevy Chase, an absolute legend right there. So before Nixon, presidents were actually protected by the media. JFK maybe having a few, women who were not Miss Kennedy stuck into the White House. And then I believe it was Roosevelt who had some pretty debilitating, debilitating injuries or problems there that that the media kind of kept hidden from the public. But now, that's not exactly the same. So my question is that if Trump is convicted of crimes before or after he reached before his time in the White House, because there's apparently a bunch of investigations into him in New York, should Biden pardon him to help the country move on from this entire saga. What say you, Kelly?
Real short answer here. No. Longer answer. I think, Nixon was pardoned because his crimes related to the presidency. In Trump's case, that may not, there's a lot of skeletons in the closet. If he's convicted of a crime, it may not be for anything related to his presidency. It may be from something predating his presidency. We've seen a lot of questions around his taxes and how they were handled and where his money has come from, where it's gone. So I wouldn't be surprised if he faces a courtroom over something like that. I also think that, Ford may have really thought that he was making the right decision at the time. But I think history has proved that it was the wrong decision. My dad was a big fan of it, saying that, well, the country didn't need that, he was right to do it, moved us on. But really, I think it, encouraged the GOP and got us to the point where we are today, in our post-truth era.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely undermined people's faith in government, at the time. And there were a lot of people, it's interesting, throughout the Trump years, he's been compared to Nixon a lot. There were a lot of people who believed Richard Nixon right up until the very end and were shocked by what happened. And so on both sides of the aisle, folks who saw Nixon as a crook and, folks who didn't, that was very shocking to be this divide there and really not have like a definitive conclusion of Nixon paying for his crimes.
Yeah, I think that to try and just pull the rug over this would be a mistake. Again, because I think of course the president may face charges over things he's done in office. We've seen a lot of violations of various things like the Hatch Act. So good chance he could face trouble over that. But there's a lot of chance he could face charges over something completely unrelated to his time in the presidency.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of questions of, tax issues and stuff like that before this. We actually were planning on doing a story about Ivanka being subpoenaed. But, Don, I believe Eric Trump has also been subpoenaed, but they're actively looking into Trump's taxes from before he became president. There's an active investigation going on there. So at this point, it seems like it's not if Trump will be indicted, but when. And we'll just have to see how things play out going forward.
Yeah, Biden has said that his administration will not take the same attitude towards the Justice Department that the Trump administration has, kind of using it as another branch of the executive office. Whether that means he plans not to prosecute Trump remains to be seen. But I think it's more that he's signaling that the White House will no longer be directly in charge of the Justice Department, and we're going to go back to seeing a separation of powers there.
Absolutely. For Biden's part, I have seen some things that indicate that he wants to kind of move on from the Trump presidency, the Trump administration, but that just seems like we're gonna have a hard time doing that. I think this might be another one of those big fights that Biden is going to have to face with his presidency, and likely with a divided government if Republicans actually do hold on to the Senate.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, on to the next one, my friend. So, you ever see someone on YouTube with thousands and thousands and thousands of followers and wonder how much they're making? Actually, it was kind of funny, someone wrote some hateful comment on one of my videos and wrote something like, there's a millionaire talking with an IQ of 80. And I'm like, you think I'm a millionaire? Fantastic. Well, anyway, I am not a millionaire, but thanks to the power of the internet and Social Blade, we can get an idea of how much your favorite YouTubers are making. So, if you are a fan of conservatives on YouTube, you've probably heard of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk has 884,000 Facebook followers, 339,000 YouTube subscribers, and according to Social Blade, makes up to $27,000 a month with videos like this.
The left has always hated Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving can be interpreted as a religious holiday if you believe in giving thanks to a creator. But they hate Thanksgiving because they believe there is nothing you should be thankful for in America. This is an awful place. It is cancerous, rotten to the core. Tear it all down. Burn it from within. Why would you be thankful? Instead, we need a revolution. Now they're...
Yes. According to Charlie Kirk, the Democrats are going to war on Thanksgiving. Seriously? In case he hasn't noticed, there's a crazy pandemic going on nowadays. And also, if you follow conservatives on Facebook and YouTube, you may have heard of Dan Bongino. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not a huge fan. He has 1.8 million followers on Facebook, 723,000 YouTube subscribers, and according to Social Blade, makes up to $24,000 a month with little gems like these.
But how is this not the scandal of the century right now? We have the Democrats for 6 months, even more than that, who pumped us full. I mean, if you're a liberal today, don't you feel stupid that for 6 months you were told the biggest scandal in the world was Trump colluding with the Russians to tilt the course of an American election? Now we find out that the boomerang has come back and slammed the Democrats right in the face, and the entire time the Russian connection was through the DNC and the Clinton campaign.
To be clear, Russia hacked the DNC and then gave Clinton's emails supposedly to WikiLeaks, who steadily made them publicly available right up to the 2016 election. Seems an odd way of colluding. Now again, with collusion, that's the idea that a foreign power is helping one of our political candidates. I don't know how releasing emails and damaging stuff about the Clinton campaign is somehow supposed to help the Democrats in Clinton in 2016. But hey, all of those clips are lies. They're misinformation. And these people are in the business of selling that misinformation. And my friends, business is booming. So Kelly, what do you think about, if we just cut the show right now and just start making some stuff up and making some quick cash? I don't know about you, but I'd love me a yacht for this this Christmas.
There's clearly a market for it. Yeah, the business of lying is booming. I mean, we've seen this, for years now. There's guys, from as far apart as San Francisco to Macedonia, who don't believe any of the articles they write. They just post it online because it makes money, and they've come out and said that, and people still read the articles. They still, just believe it with all their heart. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of money to be made in lying. There's tons of money being pumped into the conservative side of things. I mean, there's a few people who very clearly were liberals, had liberal policies, and then realized they couldn't cut it as a regular journalist, or decided they just wanted a piece of that moolah. And all of a sudden, have very right-wing politics. We've seen it happen over and over again.
Exactly, and it's interesting. I was just I had an interview with a guy this past week, and he mentioned Tim Pool and how that kind of happened with him, and how he's working at Vice News, this liberal channel, then seeing all this stuff about the corp. It's really controlled by liberal corporate interests and all this liberal stuff, and I'm like. And then he leaves and starts his own thing. And I'm like, okay, that's a very marketable story of yours, Tim Pool. Also, as you and I know, by working in the news, a lot of these news organizations are corporations. They're big business. And I don't know about you, but, stereotypically, big business, big shareholders of corporations aren't these bleeding heart liberals as some of these folks would suggest.
Yeah, not a whole lot of socialists in big business. Somehow, unsurprisingly, that the idea that some of America's, largest companies aren't run by socialists, that shouldn't surprise anybody. Like, let's be real here. These media companies are, these so-called liberal media companies are parts of giant conglomerates, that are run by the uber wealthy. I mean, many of the anchors you see on TV actually aren't very rich. Your local newsman certainly isn't making billions, but Tucker Carlson, even Anderson Cooper, these guys come from quite a lot of money. Not just rich, we're talking really rich.
Absolutely. And I finally, I have a friend of mine who's a conservative, very conservative. We kind of grew up together. And I finally got through to him because about this, this Trump voter fraud stuff he's trying to go through with. And he's bringing up random cases. And a lot of these other conservative commentators, they bring up all these random, facts and evidence. And it's funny, like, he sends them to me as if this is true. And then it's just a quick Google search, and it's like, no, there's a very simple explanation here for us. It's just literally capitalizing off of all this stuff. And, yeah, the idea that, okay, yes, there's Don Bongino there with all his, which I'm pronouncing that wrong. How's that supposed to be pronounced? Bongino?
I don't know. Like you said, I'm not a huge fan of his either. Haven't really followed his career. And in fact, I think I've tried to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, you definitely should. I would not get into it. But it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, like, this guy has a financial incentive to, like, make this crap up. And I'm like, Trump's saying there's this massive voter fraud, and Bongino and Kirk, they're all pushing this mass voter fraud. And it's one of those things where I'm like, in a realistic scenario, you have to think about this rationally. What you're saying is all these reporters across the country in local news stations, local, atop the crowd, like smaller station markets, bigger markets, they're all, just going to lie for Trump when they're making like $30,000 a year. Like, come on, that's not a whole lot of money to really be, hiding this mass conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well believe any of the alien conspiracies. You might as well believe that lizards in human skin are controlling everything, that the Illuminati is out there, and that Jay-Z's part of it. All of these things I think are about equally likely as mass voter fraud. And I mean, honestly, probably a few of them are more likely than mass voter fraud. Absolutely.
Yeah, but the aliens and the lizard costume things is real, Kelly. I got some ex-girlfriends out, I was just saying, not natural. Just kidding out there. It's just a joke. This is funny. We're having fun with this. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think I wish people understood the financial, because people share this stuff as if it's true, and I wish people understood like the financial incentive there is to lie to you, to make sure that.
I mean, there's tons of money in conservative America. I mean, it's at this point the Republican Party more or less is a minority party dedicated to protecting the wealth of wealthy Americans. They've got some other points, but what they're really effective at doing is installing conservative federal judges and giving the wealthy tax cuts. That's pretty much all we've seen during the Trump administration. I mean, we're still mired in the last war. The war in Afghanistan started by the Bush administration. We're still there. We're still in Iraq. So the Conservative Party really is about making those people wealthier. Vice President Cheney made a huge amount of money with his company selling substandard equipment to troops.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy to think that even Liz Cheney, the Congresswoman from South Dakota, is like, look, can we just move on from all these election fraud claims? Like, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, they're ridiculous.
I hear you on that, man. And to our next ridiculous story of the evening. So I want you to imagine this scenario. An active shooter kills not one, but 2 people. He's then arrested and charged with 6 felonies, including 2 homicide charges and a felony charge for attempted murder. Now imagine thinking that this active shooter would be great to represent your business. Yes, Kyle Rittenhouse, as you might remember as the Kenosha shooter, has just been released on his $2 million bond, thanks to the help of a lot of conservative contributors, conservatives who have raised money for his release. And Rittenhouse has just signed a sponsorship deal with the Black Rifle Company, and he's also reportedly gotten $150,000 from his bond from Mike Lindell, also known as the My Pillow guy, right? And just in case you have no clue who Kyle Rittenhouse is, here's a little reminder.
People are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way.
Hey, he just shot them! Hey, dude right here just shot them!
Yeah, that always pisses me off about this clip. That's everything you need to know about how African Americans or people looked at or by the police or whatever is that they're literally yelling, this guy just shot someone, he's got a gun, he's got his hands up because he's expecting to get arrested, and he just walks on through, no problem at all. And so, Kelly, is this the ultimate sign of our divided times, that a 17-year-old is considered a domestic terrorist by half of the country, and the other half of the country looks at him like a hero?
I mean, at best, this is a dumb kid who, got his head filled with, some pretty scary ideas and made some dumb mistakes and got a couple of people killed through his direct actions. At worst, he's a domestic terrorist, and I don't think those are that far apart in this case. I don't think this is a case where we're looking at somebody who, deserves somehow more benefit of the doubt than we would give somebody else in any of these cases. This is somebody who got a gun and went to put himself in a situation to use it and used it. I don't think it's really any different than if he had shot a couple of people while knocking over a convenience store. To see, him lauded as this hero is just bizarre. And yeah, I mean, I you saw there in that article, the My Pillow CEO, known as the last big major advertiser on Fox News for Tucker Carlson, was behind getting him released. It's pretty bad. I mean, it's I can imagine, for people who were there in Kenosha, this has got to be like, being a New Yorker and seeing, a member of, Al Qaeda who helped plan, the 9/11 attacks, just get out on bail and get a sponsorship. And it's frankly disgusting.
Absolutely. I'm like, what's next? Like a modeling contract for, the Boston bomber, or, what is Dylan Roof going to get signed by somebody? Like, it's just, and it's one of those things, like people, I've always thought that this, really just showed people's biases because, it's pretty clear to see, how all that went down. And, people were defending his mom, which I'm like, that's just a sign. If you, like, who in their right minds thinks it's a good idea for a 17-year-old to drop their 17-year-old off in what they think is a violent, like, protest zone, to defend businesses or, get rid of graffiti or whatever he was supposed to be doing? Like, it's just it just boggles the mind how some people could think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, this is, we've talked about it for years, about, what makes someone become a terrorist or join Al Qaeda or any, ISIS, what makes people go from living in Paris or Boston or wherever, and then, they look at these videos on the internet and decide that they're going to join ISIS. And now, I mean, it looks like we're seeing a little bit of that here at home, where, you have somebody who was sitting at home watching all these videos, had their head filled with all this ideology, painting other people as the enemy, painting them, as less than human, and then got a gun and went out and used it.
Absolutely. And we're already seeing that with the rise of militias around the country, and, violent militias who wanted to kidnap the governor of Michigan and hold a trial, which, was really just code word for they were going to execute her. And then the same thing in Michigan. It's kind of crazy to see the rise of terrorism here in America. That's all homebred.
Yeah, I mean, and it's wild to see, these, them being called militias, rather than groups of people planning, a terrorist attack on a governor. I mean, we've seen all these crazy reactions to, supposed terror plots. The FBI got in trouble even for, at one point just setting suspects up by providing them with the plans, the bomb, the van, the guns, and so to see somebody, these guys already had all that by themselves, it's wild to think that, the country was captivated by some of those cases, involving eco-terrorists or what have you, where, no one got hurt, nothing came even close to fruition. And then now we have a lot of these groups where, in some cases people are really getting hurt.
Absolutely. And I do always kind of find it how these guys, some of these militias, some of these groups, they think like, oh, we're the real patriots. We're the real, we're the patriots here. And I'm like, if this was if this was 1776, we all know what side y'all would have been on.
Yeah. It's hard to see, the threepers as, some people who would have actually participated in the American Revolution, or at least on the American side. Because I certainly, it's these people fighting to uphold conservatism. I don't think they would have been fighting for revolution.
Probably not. I mean, from what I grew up knowing about conservatives, I don't think kidnapping governors and executing them was, I don't remember that being a part of the party platform.
No, I don't remember that being in the rule book before. Seems like we now have some kind of exemption to it now that these, people are not being, just entirely condemned.
Absolutely. I guess if you can't beat them, form a militia. There you go. And this whole story of bad parenting kind of brings me into our next story. So one of the hardest things about 2020 is all the things that we've lost, right? Birthdays, graduations, weddings, and the list goes on and on. But for some out there, a global pandemic that has killed 250,000 Americans and infected 12 million people in the United States is no reason to not have a good time. In the small town of Rolla, Missouri, a group of parents decided to, get a nice little... Oop, that's kind of messed up there. Let's go back. In Rolla, Missouri, a small group of parents decided to organize an off-the-books homecoming and packed 200 kids, without masks, into a steakhouse called Matt's Steakhouse for some COVID-filled super spreader fun. Now, if this sounds ridiculous, that's because it is. Now, the thing is, these parents were not stupid. They knew these high schoolers couldn't do anything without posting it on the gram or on Snapchat. So they actively ensured that there would be no list of who actually attended the event. And so there would be no contact tracing. Rolla High School, which many of these students attended, is now going all virtual to avoid a COVID outbreak in this town of just 46,000, with one hospital and a total of just 242 staffed hospital beds. But after reading this, an article about this incident, one thing did stand out to me. And that was a quote from the owner of the steakhouse, Matt Steakhouse. Not sure if his name was Matt, but whoever the owner was. They said, "We were not participants and did not work this event." They said, "Many of our staff do wear masks. It is their choice. And business owners are struggling to find a balance that works for them, us included." Now, as a small business guy, I hear what they're saying, right? I hear where they're coming from, and so I'm torn with this kind of stuff. I've seen a lot of these stories, and it's part of me is like, is where do we draw the line here, right? Where do we draw the line on doing what we have to do to stop the virus, and where does the line begin with the government kind of controlling what we can and can't do? I've heard a lot of people quote 1984 and just kind of the overreaching arc of the government, right? And it just kind of makes you think, where is the line? Where should the line be? What do you think, Kelly?
I mean, in this case, it's very clear, they were using code words, they were, like you said, they made sure there was no guest list. These people knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing was wrong, and they went ahead and did it anyways. And I don't think obviously, the coronavirus has been less dangerous for teens and children, but, they're still going to interact with the rest of the community. Having a super spreader event like this, just puts that much more of it out there, that much more potentiality to infect others. And I don't think asking people to wear a mask is quite the 1984 scenario here. I mean, people were just fine with the Patriot Act. That's a whole lot more serious than wearing a mask. Everybody seems to be acting like, wearing a mask is the end of the world. None of us like it. But, it's not some kind of giant loss of freedom, just not infecting your fellow Americans, just showing basic compassion for others. And really that's the only way we're going to stop this is with by limiting large gatherings and with mask orders.
Absolutely. And, just to be clear too, like I don't, people who go off on masks and I think this is some kind of like 1984 government, takeover. Look, I'm like, if you don't like that, you're going to hate seatbelt laws when this is all over, or drunk driving laws, or, any kind of laws that are, kind of try to govern folks for the safety of society. And I also, young people, they usually do better with the virus. And so I'm in favor of a lot of these rules and things to try to stop the virus, because that's how society's always worked, right? We've always had to legislate to maybe the folks who are maybe not the smartest, right? Like, for example, I can drive as fast as I want. I'm a very good driver. I can drive fast, real good. But maybe some other people can't do the same. But that's how society works. We legislate to, try to make sure everyone's safe in society, no matter how, safe you may or may not feel.
Yeah, there was massive resistance to seatbelt laws, when they tried to get those passed. I think it took, somewhere around 20 years to get them put in. There still aren't helmet laws in a large part of the country. And the reason we got the seatbelt laws is because it was tied to federal funding. The reason we got a lot of those helmet laws, it was tied to federal funding. And then when it stopped being tied to federal funding, several states repealed it. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear here. You just tie mask ordinance to federal funding, and then when this is over, we can just stop wearing masks. If we would all just take it a little bit more seriously right now. That's the thing is nobody wants another lockdown. Nobody wants to continue forever. Nobody wants to keep wearing masks. We're all on the same page. The idea that you're being oppressed is ridiculous.
Absolutely, and it's very interesting to me at times when I see people who say the coronavirus is an example of why we need less government, when really I think we need more effective government is the thing. For this business owner, I'm hearing him and I'm like, okay, we want our employees to be safe, we want our employees to be masked up, but I also get the idea that, okay, if we don't if we're not open for any of these kind of things, or if, we're not going to survive, and there's not going to be a business here anyway. And that's kind of a shit decision for this guy in a small town in Missouri to have to make. And so I feel like there should be like more government help for these kind of folks, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer in this case is more government rather than less government, because we've seen the state-by-state solution, or the state-by-state attack on the problem, and we've gotten the state-by-state solution. I think the government ought to be, doing more to support small businesses. I think it ought to be doing more to support people who are out of work. And, because I think they're the reason we're in this boat. I think if we'd had a strong federal response, we'd be done with this. All around the world, we've seen other countries do a much better job of handling this, many of which were much less well prepared. There are some countries with, pretty large populations who have had very small amounts of deaths. And really, it's just, we saw such just a poor effort from the federal government coming into this and continuing to this day. There's no real federal guidance on this. So without that, I don't see how we move on from this. So I think really it's up to the federal government at this point to fix that. Maybe by repealing some of those new tax cuts for the rich that were going to pay for themselves and have not.
Yep, and if you're ever up that they're upset about, oh, why did we have a plan? Weren't more prepared? Remember, there was a pandemic playbook. Problem was it had the name Obama written on it, and of course, so we can't use that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a pandemic response team in China because we know we can't trust the Chinese government when it comes to these kind of things, and they got rid of it. Biden came out and said, well, we weren't prepared for this, just before it happened, looking at what the Trump administration was doing, so hopefully somebody who had the forethought to say, before any of this all happened, to say we're not prepared and we need to get it together, hopefully somebody like that can fix the mess we're in now.
Yep, absolutely. That's what I'm hoping that we can move forward. And for anyone out there who's thinking about planning a prom, one, we can maybe do it in the spring, or I should say homecoming. We can push these dances back. And also, let's remember what homecoming and prom was really like. Awkward on the dance floor, not dancing very well. Try not to embarrass yourself. Maybe we're saving these kids, Kelly.
I don't know if everybody will view it that way or had your exact experiences with homecoming and prom, but maybe
I got down, but I got lots of
trouble.
I got lots of trouble for my dance moves. I literally had my superintendent come up to me and said, "I've not seen moves like that since I watched BET After Dark." And my response was, "You watch BET After Dark?"
Yeah, how do you respond to that other than with that question?
I don't know. I just kept on dancing. It's a good time, man. But from one bad coronavirus story to another. So, the world can seem like a pretty dark place sometimes. A lot of bad news all the time. It can seem like it's just constant bad news. So when there is a story that can legitimately bring everyone together, that tends to stand out.
It started with a misdirected text message and ended with strangers coming together over Thanksgiving dinner.
I had no idea this was going to happen.
In 2016, let me see if I can fix this here. Nope, I can't work. In 2016, Jamal got an invite from a grandma to go to Thanksgiving. There was a little case of maybe the wrong number there. There's the information on what time and when to show up for the feast. The thing is, the guy, Jamal, who got this text message, it wasn't from his grandma. It was from a woman named Wanda. Now, after realizing the mistake, Jamal asked for a plate of food Anyway, and Wanda responded with, well, of course you can, because that's what grandmas do. They ate together on Thanksgiving and have every year since then. But this year, there will be one less person at the table. Wanda's husband, Lonnie, passed away from the coronavirus just this last week. Now, I've been shocked when I talk to people about the virus, and they don't know anyone who's gotten sick, or anyone who's been hospitalized, or anyone who has died. I was hanging out with a friend this past week, and I was telling her that another mutual friend of Kelly and I's, they were supposed to have a wedding that weekend, and they didn't. And my friend asked, well, why didn't they have the wedding? What happened? I'm like, well, they both got COVID. And she's like, oh, how are they doing? And I'm like, well, they got COVID and they both died. That's why they're not getting married. And so, when I see stories like this, I hope they remind people that people are still getting sick and people are still dying. And it makes me so, as horrible as it is, it makes me wonder if people are going to finally take this seriously. Because a lot of people remember this story. A lot of people remember what happened with this family. And it was a great story, Yeah, Kelly, do you remember this from back in the day?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was, this great heartwarming story that, we all saw. It's two average Americans, a very average situation going into, just texting to the wrong number. So I think it's something we could all connect with. And I think that's kind of why this hits home, her losing her husband and, them having to hold their Thanksgiving to get together earlier so that they, wouldn't expose each other's families, after to the same extent. It's sad. There's, like you were saying to me, it's wild at this point that someone could say they didn't know anybody who had been sick or hadn't gotten it or hadn't died. I don't know anyone personally who's died, but again, quite a few people, just outside of our circle of friends, I know quite a few people who have, especially people my parents' age, their group of friends. My dad knows 6 people with it right now, all from different groups, none of them related at all. Aside from that, I know, those people of those that I know, I saw, I think 3 people within 2 days on social media, say that they had it. At this point, I've known quite a few people who've had it, and it's run the full gamut. Some people didn't have any problems at all. Some people got really, really sick. And then, like you said, a couple of people just, friend of a friend I've seen die. We had another friend who passed away from pneumonia during this, and I think that's something that doesn't get talked about as much right now as it did at the beginning of this. But I think we should start talking about it again as hospitals fill up. We are going to see more people die from preventable illnesses. We are going to see people not getting the treatment they need, and it's going to cost lives.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, we're in free for all right now on the coronavirus, and I think that we're going to see it get a lot worse through this holiday season. And I think, again, it's going to cost lives, not just those people infected with the coronavirus, but people with preventable illnesses.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things. You think about this story, and you think as the United States, as we pass, 250,000 deaths of the coronavirus, there are 250,000 people that have died. And all those people have, their husbands, their wives, their brothers, their sisters, their aunts and uncles. And so this scene as it's being played out here with a empty chair with a picture is something that's going to happen at the tables of millions and millions and millions of families this Thanksgiving. And it just shocks me that there's still this debate over, should we have Thanksgiving? Should we get together? They're trying to urge people to not get together. And I'm like, that's just a slap in the face to the millions of people that are now, missing someone because of this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible the number of people, that have died. When this began, looking at the figures way back in March, I was predicting we were going to see, at least 300,000 deaths by the end of the year. And now we're, when I was saying that, people were acting like I was crazy. But, now we're on track for that. And, it's an awful thing to be right about. There's just, like you said, I mean, there's so much personal pain wrapped up in 250,000 Americans dead. Many, many more left with debilitating illnesses. Not just people who've been sick for weeks, but people who are still having cognitive issues, people who are still having breathing problems. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just those deaths. This affects massive numbers of people, and I think we're at a point where we can't afford to be cavalier about it.
No, and it always shocks me when I look at the maps of the maps of our coronavirus so far in the outbreak, and you look at the numbers, in March when we kind of first shut down, March, April, and you look at the spike there, and that looks like nothing compared to the spike, in July and June when there was the other spike at the beginning of the summer. And that both of those look nothing compared to the spike we're looking like we're going to face now. And so as we head into the winter and as we head into the holiday season, it's not looking good. I saw recently, and I remember when you made that prediction, and I kind of thought that was, I don't know, man. I didn't want to believe it. And now I've seen that they're projecting that by March we'll have hit like either 400 or 450,000 deaths.
Yeah,
is what's expected.
Yeah, it's just it's incredible that this is happening. In modern times. It seems like something out of the past. I think for a lot of people, it seems like it can't be real, and maybe that's why some people have so much trouble coming to terms with it. Maybe that's why people are treating this, like it's a hoax or no big deal, because they just can't accept the idea that, this is so dangerous and is doing so much harm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big factor in it. I can't help but, being a kind of a filmmaker a bit myself, and, you watch Hollywood movies and you see all, the 2012 or you see Armageddon or you see the kind of things of like pandemics or like Contagion, or you see, and it just looks so much crazier in a movie, and it's almost like people can't deal with the realistic output, how things are working in reality, and so just want to like discount this virus.
Yeah, just because it's not the traffic stopping end of the world, doesn't mean we shouldn't just completely stop taking it serious. I mean, people. I think you're right. I think that people, they're saying it's not like Contagion. It's not like, one of these apocalypse end of the world movies. So it must be just like the flu, and it's simply not true. And now with the number of cases, the number of deaths we're seeing, keep in mind that we know a lot more now about how to treat this. We know a lot more about how to care for patients with the coronavirus. So survival rates are a lot higher. So the fact that we're seeing so many deaths right now really should tell you how many cases we're having, how bad this is. Some of the positivity rates right now for testing are off the charts. They're just unbelievable.
Yep, absolutely. And it's one of those things, I think, when the numbers started going up, I was encouraged. I saw articles, and the media's gotten a lot of flack for trying to embellish this. But the article that I've read pointed out that yes, the mortality rate when we first started the pandemic was 25%. You going to the hospital, you're probably gonna die. And now that's down to 9%, which is great. But as you look at these numbers, that was back in, that 25% category was back in March, and we had like 30,000 cases a day. And now, just yesterday, there were 171,000 new cases of COVID-19. And so, even though the science has gotten better, at a certain point, there will be so many new cases that it just becomes unstoppable.
Yeah, and the way the American healthcare system works is a spillover system. This hospital's too busy, so they send patients to the next hospital or the next care center, or but if everywhere is busy at the same time, our original state by state solution, just kind of hoping it didn't sweep through the country too quickly, that it just all of our slow the surge, all of that kind of stuff, so that the hard hit parts of the country could rely on less hard hit parts of the country. I mean, now, the case numbers are so high everywhere that, we are going to start hitting that breaking point. We are already seeing it in some areas like El Paso, where they've brought in the National Guard and they're having them move bodies. We're seeing it here in Texas right now. Out in Amarillo, they're bringing in more and more, equipment to handle this surge, and things are bad, and I think they're about to get worse.
That's absolutely right, because as people make holiday plans and people want to get together, and the numbers are undeniably going to go up. And I do want to kind of leave all of you out there with this, and that's that, the coronavirus has forced us to kind of face some hard truths about, reality and, what we're all kind of doing in life, and, whether, you've lost your job, you had to do something else, if you're homeschooling kids now. There's a lot of things about American society that the coronavirus has kind of forced upon everyone to kind of come to grips with. And one of the things I want people to kind of realize out there is that these holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, traditional holidays that we all want to get together as a family, you have to remember that these are just days on the calendar, right? Like, don't wait till Thanksgiving, don't wait till Christmas to call your mom, to call your dad, to FaceTime when the pandemic is over. Try not to take those days for granted, right? Don't take your family for granted. Again, those are just days. You can try to see your family, or when there's not a pandemic, anytime, right? So as much as it sucks, the idea of missing out on Thanksgiving and Christmas this year, if we're safe, then there will be one next year.
Yeah, we talked about the whole war on Thanksgiving and all of that. But yeah, I mean, it really is, if you really, it's not worth killing a family member over. It's, much less putting yourself in danger. It's not worth costing someone their life, somebody who's dear to you. So take this seriously. If you're going to see your family, quarantine before you go, quarantine after you get back. Take this really seriously, because cases are bad, and they're bad everywhere, and a lot of people aren't taking it seriously. So if you can't see them this year, you can't see them. Plenty of people who work in the service industry, work in news, various careers, we've missed holidays with our family, and we could tell you, life goes on. You could see them another time, you could call them on the phone, you could FaceTime them. It's not the end of the world to miss one or two holidays, especially if these are the stakes.
Absolutely. Couldn't have put it better, my friend. Well, right on, Kelly. That's another fun show here in the books, as they say.
All right. Well, sorry for ending on a bit of a somber note, but thank you again for having me.
I know. It's one of those things. It's so much fun talking with you on this. I kind of feel bad ending on such a, such a somber kind of thing. But it's, yeah, I mean, it boggles the mind to me. I don't even know I don't know how to correctly put that, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, I mean, I love Thanksgiving. I love Christmas. Love all these things. There's a safe way to still try to go out there and do it. But, it's just, it blows my mind that people are still, wanting to, discard the virus, hold on to this stuff. And I don't know, man. It's just, it's dark days. I mean, it sucks to have to kind of keep going on about them, but this is reality. It kind of makes, I can't believe people are always saying how much the media is blowing this up. And I don't know about other people out there, but I hate talking about the coronavirus.
No, I mean, the idea that this is being blown out of proportion is ridiculous. This is the worst health crisis. Except for people who are over 100 years old, this is the worst health crisis of our lives. This is the worst health crisis since, the flu pandemic, all the way back in the early 1900s.
Yep.
I mean, this isn't swine flu or Ebola or, this is 250,000 Americans dead directly of the coronavirus. That's not counting, all of the people who died of preventable illnesses. That's, not counting all these people, are going to be left with problems for God knows how long. I mean, it's hard to put that, on one end of the scale and Thanksgiving on the other.
Absolutely. And it's like I keep asking Grandma, I'm like, okay, the Black Plague. What'd you guys do back then? How'd you guys get out of that, Grandma?
Yeah,
She hasn't given me an answer yet.
To me, I mean, I was, hate to say it, but in a way, thankful my grandparents have all passed on. My parents are older, so I'm going to be especially careful this holiday season, because, like I said, it's just not worth killing a family member.
Nah, man. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine like going on with that kind of stuff, because it's just, especially, I mean, sometimes people are kind of, forced out, they have to work this or that, but really any kind of excuse compared to that is not good. And especially when I see people who, they went out and they did something stupid. They went to a party, went to a bar or something like that. And then they passed it on to a family member, or, there was someone had to hold a wedding. Like I saw the story about there was a wedding, and I think there were like 130 people that went to it, and 7 people died, and none of those 7 people actually attended the wedding.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. I mean, and that's the real thing, I mean, you could be sitting at home saying, these people don't believe in it, they believe it's a hoax, let them get it, let them die. Well, I mean, that doesn't help us, everybody getting it passes it on, especially people who are not taking it serious, who are not, being careful. So in reality, just whatever you may have to think about it, what we need to do is stop the spread of it. And, buckle down, get this done, and, get this past, get it behind us.
Absolutely. And I've definitely thought that, like, out of all the times for a pandemic to hit the United States, this has got to be the absolute worst, because there's no effective leadership on the federal level. President Trump's not that.
Well, I mean,
it's funny. He's even admitted that he wasn't paying attention when the pandemic first started because he was getting impeached, Like, that's the thing he's actually come out and said. Like, he was more focused on that than anything to do with the coronavirus. And people are just so politically divided that it's just kind of, it makes it harder, because really to beat this thing, we all have to come together as Americans, and that ain't happening.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me. Always good to be on here.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of, I was trying to lighten the mood. How about we end on a less somber note? I mean, I feel it's a rough day, and my Falcons lost, Cowboys won, lost in fantasy. Nothing's going right, Kelly.
Well, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, thanks again for being on, man. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. You guys have a good Sunday night.